Hey, it's David Baer with Wine Conversations, and I'm very, very excited to have the pleasure to talk today with Alexandrine, who is online with us from Gevrey-Chambertin in Burgundy, which I didn't say with a French accent or in French. So, anyway, Alexandrine, thank you so much for joining us. I'm very, very happy to have you here. Um, Now, you and I first met when we were working together. I was working with a company representing your wines here in the U.S., but your wines are
Mhm.
available in a number of places around the world. Yes?
Yes,
Yeah.
now we've been developing markets. So historically, I developed first Great Britain, USA, and then Japan, but we've been extending to Asia mostly, and Australia, and Taiwan, China, Canada as well, and little market around like Denmark or
Mhm.
Luxembourg, Switzerland, and we actually have right now maybe 12 destinations, and we're gonna develop some more
Yeah.
in the year coming. So
Now, this is interesting because you don't make a lot of wine. You have
I don't.
right.
I
So this is a lot of places. If I remember correctly, you have around 4 hectares, which is just under 10 acres of
Yes,
yes.
true. Hmm.
You make mostly Pinot Noir
I do. Yeah,
and
90% of the production is Pinot Noir, just
okay,
10% for the whites.
and the white wine is made from Chardonnay. Yes,
Absolutely.
yes, great. And uh, but your total production, how much wine do you make from that small amount of land?
Well, we are supposed to produce about 20,000 bottles a year, but we are definitely below that because the vintages those past years were very low in quantities. So we hardly reach 15,000 bottles a year.
Wow. And so
Yeah.
this changes from year to year depending on the weather. It'll
Yeah.
influence the amount of wine that you're able to produce. So that's interesting. So you can make as much as 20,000 bottles, but you've lost about 25% of your production capabilities this past year. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, because of the forecast,
Mm,
because of the climatic conditions
mm,
which were not that great. And then you have to do a really, really serious selection. I mean, if you are having too much fruits compared to the sun on a specific vintage, you can't have those fruits ripen by the end, even if it's not that much quantity. So you need to do something. And the thing in Burgundy, it's removing leaves to have the best exposure as possible to the sun, and then reducing the number of fruits. So this way, you can make sure it's going to be ripe by the end. Whereas if you leave everything on, it's never going to get ripened, you know,
yeah.
because of the quantity of fruits. It can be concentrated then.
So I want to get back to this conversation about why in Burgundy you need to remove the leaves. But before we do that, I want to backtrack and just learn a little bit about you and your story. I didn't mention the name of the domain. It's named for your father, Marc. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And if I recall, this is started with family-owned vines.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that was how many generations now in your family?
I'm the fourth generation.
Fourth generation. And was wine being produced by the family before, or
Oh,
was it?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
I mean, we've been always producing wines, but at the beginning, it was not exclusively wine because it was not sufficient enough to live like a job. So my grandfather was also having, kind of a farm system, including, growing vegetables and having chicken and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Just wine was a kind of second activity to live, but not the main one. So from my grandfather, it changed quite a bit because he really became a full vine grower winemaker. And the thing with my grandfather was he was selling his wine mostly to negociant because it was costing a lot of money to make your own bottling.
So
And
can you
so,
for our viewers who don't know what a negociant is, can you explain how that system works?
well, system is easy. Negotiation can buy some grapes or wine before aging or after aging or even in bottles.
Hmm.
So at this time, my grandfather was selling the wine into barrels. And so they were in charge of aging and maturation and
Yeah.
what we call élevage.
Hmm.
And since my father decided to change that into a more qualitative way, but as well recognition, I guess. Like we were not award for all the work we
Hmm.
were doing on that. So it's like that you're working so hard, but nobody knows. So it was very frustrating, and my father, because he was doing great wines, he
Hmm.
really wanted to change that. So he really decided to put the production into bottles 100% in 1982.
Okay. So, 1982, you went from selling the wines that had somebody else's name on it to getting the recognition with your father's name on it. Is that? I mean,
Uh,
when I say is the negociant's name was really the prominent name, so he didn't get the recognition. Is
yeah,
that?
yeah,
Yeah, I see. I see.
that's accurate. Yes.
So now you come into the picture. It's your father's business, and lots of families have businesses where the kids are expected to just join the family business. Is that an
Mhm.
expectation that you were going to grow up and be in the wine business?
This question is a kind of very frequent asked question. So it's very funny because you in Burgundy, I think you don't decide or do not decide about being you are or you're not.
Hmm.
But to me, it's truly not a decision. So I never lived that like I need to make a choice or I need to make a decision
Yes.
or it just came naturally. So you just don't think about, you just do.
Hmm. So it's and I think that may be a very healthy way of living, something that many of us in North America aren't used to. So, um, so you knew that you were going to be joining the family business, and at some point, so you studied, and then you went off to Australia of all places. Te-
Australia and New
yeah.
Zealand in foreign countries, but I've been working as well in south of France,
Hmm.
including a little place near Carcassonne and another wine estate in Provence,
Hmm.
located near Bandol, and another one still in Provence, located near Fréjus. So I was quite comfortable, by producing over grape variety, style of wine, red, white, rosé, whatever, everything which was produced there.
Hmm.
And I thought it was just so exciting to have different vision of the world and wine and everything. So Australia and New Zealand were great. And since 2007, I'm also involved doing the wine for Phelps Creek Vineyards in
Hmm.
Oregon.
Yeah. So, just a question about this generation, our generation in Burgundy. This is probably different from the way that things happened in the past. I can't imagine that your father's generation or your grandfather's generation were traveling around the world or even outside of, you know, Burgundy to learn what else other people were doing. Is that
They
something?
were not
Right.
doing that at all. They were not moving from the place where they were living
Yeah.
and working.
Hmm.
So it's kind of new generation stuff to
Yes.
me. Because I think most people from my generation used to travel around the world and try to get some new things and new experiences just because it's easier now.
Hmm.
You have a lot of way to travel. It's not that complicated compared to the past. And I think regarding the money, it's easier.
Yeah.
So it just helps actually. But some people they just want to stick around because they're scared about moving and
Yeah.
see something else and just not being able to deal with that. So I'm not this way. I'm quite an adventurous woman. So
Well, I think we're going to get to that because I'm going to ask you in a moment about that motorcycle that you have on Facebook all the time. But here is the question that I wanna understand from your perspective about this generation of winemakers now seeing the rest of the world. What influence do you think it has on winemaking and wine growing in Burgundy? Do you think it's changing things at all?
Not at all. It doesn't change anything because nothing from where what I saw in other countries is applicable to here.
Hmm.
So it's just for my personal memories and experience, but it's not using something to reproduce something in my place. It's
Hmm.
just to have the learning and experience.
Now, one of the big learning experiences that you have, I think you alluded to this a moment ago when you talked about Phelps Creek, was I can't remember how many years now, but maybe about 10 years ago you started coming to IPNC in Oregon.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
actually, the first time was 2004.
Okay. So
So
2004, IPNC, for viewers who don't know, is the International Pinot Noir Celebration, which takes place for 20 some odd years now here in Oregon. And it's winemakers from around the world who all make wines from Pinot Noir, which is a mainstay of Burgundy, obviously, for how many hundreds of years?
wow. No idea, but since a monk, so
Yes.
long, long time ago,
Okay.
from maybe 8th century,
Hmm.
something like that, even before.
Okay. So and maybe it's from there, maybe it's from Switzerland. We don't know exactly where the grape started, but Burgundy as is known is synonymous with Pinot Noir. Um,
Exactly.
Oregon has become very well known for Pinot Noir, but it's much younger. It only started back in the 1960s, so we don't have the same heritage and history that you do. But you made some great connections at IPNC, one of which led to a working relationship with Phelps Creek. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about?
Yeah, well, it was a funny meeting because life is a kind of sometimes very surprising thing. So we actually went into connection with Bob Morris, who is the owner of Phelps Creek,
Hmm.
with a mutual friend who introduced each other on the eve of the IPNC 2007.
Hmm.
So actually, Alan Boussaka, who is a geologist located in the area, wanted to offer me a tour. Like, you don't know the gorge area, so I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna bring back to this place because it's really an amazing place, and I'm sure you're gonna like it. So I was like, oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I want to do it because it's exciting. It's new. I never heard about. So we went there, and I definitely fall in love with the place. The area is just gorgeous,
Hmm.
and we went to Bob's Morris place, and we have a fantastic lunch
Hmm.
with a lot of meal and wine pairing. And Bob was a fantastic host, I mean, and this view from manhood, from the deck, and just you could feel the atmosphere. It was very friendly, very relaxing, very peaceful, and the wine were very beautiful
Hmm.
too. And I brought some of my jewelry with me, and Bob tried it, and he was like amazed about the Gevrey Chambertin wine. Like, are you doing that? Yeah, I do. Wow. Would you like to do a cuvée for me? So it was kind of idea popping up. Like, I was thinking it was a joke. And
Hmm.
I say, I don't think it's gonna work. I'm working in France and I have no idea about how making wine for you in your area, how that's gonna be kind of the same, and I'm definitely not sure. But I meet again Bob during the IPNC, so he retaste my wines again, and he was really really enthusiastic about, and he asked me again about that. I was like, okay, you know what, just give me more precision, send me an email with details and how you work and what you want for me to do, and then I'm gonna consider if I can do it or not. And so this same year I was there doing my first Phelps Creek Cuvée Alexandrine wine.
Fabulous. And you have and you have been doing that ever since, yes?
Mhm.
Yeah. Now, do you still just make a cuvee, or are you doing more now?
It has been a kind of progress
Hmm.
because on the first year I was thinking that the wine, the vintage was a kind of light one.
Hmm.
So I decided to bleed off some part of the juice to make a rosé of Saignée.
I remember that wine.
So I actually did, the Pinot Noir and the Pinot Noir rosé.
Hmm.
So my cuvée was Cuvée Alexandrine for the red, and the rosé coming through was named Fleur de Roi.
Hmm.
That's a word game with my family name and Fleur because that's kind of delicate
Hmm.
and pretty wine.
Flower.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it was super nice and
Hmm.
I really liked it. And 2 years after that, we had a talk with Bob in the car, and he was just complaining about this estate. He does a blanc de noir and we don't have any. And I was like, it's definitely not a problem for me. If you want one, I'm going to do one for you. And he was like, are you able to do that? And I was like, sure, there's nothing difficult at doing.
So this is for our viewers, a Blanc de Noir is a is a white wine that was made from the Pinot
Pinot.
grapes, which are red, but the juice is pressed out before any of the
Yes,
color gets into it.
absolutely.
Okay.
That's true. So nothing really tricky about that. But those two barrels, because it's just a very, very limited cuvée, was a very special one too, because um, it's something that people are not used to have, so they really enjoy it, and it became quite fast a very popular wine as well. And the name is at this time Cœur de Roi. So it's supposed to change a little bit because one of the guy in the valley is not very happy with the name, complaining about it look like his name. So anyway, we're gonna try to change a little bit, frustrate this person.
Yeah.
But we are still making it, and since 2011, I took the full operation at Phelps Creek. So
Well,
now
so
it's
so you are the winemaker
the
there.
head winemaker, as we said, you know.
Well, great. Well, that's terrific. So now you have two wineries, one in France, one here in Oregon,
Yeah,
and
but I'm owner, vine grower,
right.
winemaker, wine merchant, wine everything in my place. I'm not
So
in a right.
so this leads me to a question about what I think a lot of people think when they say, "Oh, you're a winemaker. You make wine for a living. That must be such a fun job."
It
But
is.
so I think clearly there's a lot of fun and there's a lot of enjoyment. I can see the enthusiasm when you talk about it. Here's the question I have. What is the biggest misconception that you think consumers have about you and your lifestyle as a winemaker? Um,
Mm, I think that people used to think that I'm just having fun every time, eating every time, and drinking every time. It's just not that.
yeah.
Definitely not. There's so much work behind. And, when you are not there at every single step, you just can't realize. People that just see the glow when you are having fantastic winemaker dinner with lot of wines
Hmm.
and lot of acclaims, like kind of accolades and stuff like that. But they are just not behind you when you are having a hard time, doing crush, sorting grapes, making everything clean, sanitized, working your fermenters one by
Hmm.
one. We had so many this year. So it's a lot of work and it's a bit commitment too. Even in Gevrey, there's some evenings where you finish so late because the press needs some more time to press the quantity of grapes you put inside and a certain program press, and so you know just so much work and attention. It's not just fun and glamorous
Yeah.
thing.
So you really have two roles when you're wearing, or two different hats, I guess I should say, right? You are the farmer and wine producer, and then
Mhm.
you're also out promoting and entertaining and doing all of these things out in the public.
Yeah,
And yeah, so I can see how people seeing you out at a fancy dinner, enjoying the wines, that they think, well, this is all you have to do, right?
yeah, but it's not.
Yes. So I want to get back to that motorcycle now, and understand what it is that you do for fun. Um, Obviously, wine is a fun thing for you, but
Yes.
so what are the fun things in your life? I mean, you live in such a beautiful place, chilly in the winter, cold, right? But it's a very beautiful place. How do you entertain yourself? How do you spend your time for fun?
Well, motorcycle, having dinner with friends,
Yeah,
friends,
yeah,
and drinking wines, and I love travels too. And sometimes just being in my home,
hmm,
just relaxing, doing nothing. It's a kind of the most precious luxury for me because I'm a super active person
yes,
and I just can't stop myself. So sometimes um, just force myself to just relax and just take time and just sit down and just doing nothing.
yeah.
That's a kind of exercise, and that's probably the harder one, even if it's a more, you know, I don't have the term in English, but
Well, it's not active, so maybe,
you need
yeah,
you need to have this kind of time at some point because you are always almost like in burnout because you give so much all day long and
sure.
it's hard sometimes.
Indeed. Well, I think that's something that it sounded so poetic when you spoke about it, but it's something that most people don't take advantage of. So it's a great thing to be able to do after all of that hard work that you're doing, particularly this time of the year in the autumn. You've just done a harvest. You've just been doing so much work in the cellar now, and then you have to do all of the promotion all over the world as well.
Yeah,
So it's nice to just decompose to
yeah.
decompress. I guess is probably the right word.
Yes,
Yes,
that's the word.
decompress.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. So I,
So,
I have one last area I'd love to touch on because you encounter so many consumers as you're traveling around,
mhm.
and a lot of consumers I think are um, not familiar with all of the details and the history of where you live and the wines you produce, and so knowing that Gevrey-Chambertin is a place, that it grows, the grapes it grows, that it's located in Burgundy. Those are things that many people don't know, and you and I, we take it for granted. We learned that long ago. How do you suggest to somebody who is new to wine and interested in learning about Burgundy? What process would you recommend for them to sort of start and go through?
It depends if you have a chance to travel or not.
Hmm.
If you are staying in the US and just try to approach Burgundy wines, I will suggest to do in a nice wine bar, very educated to show to customer, full range of Burgundy,
Hmm.
and why not having, this kind of wine lessons. I know that some are organizing,
Yep.
and you can have a flight of the wines and just having a talk with the sommelier who teach you how to try and what it is and why it's kind of different. So there's no magic to learn. I will say it's easy for me because I've been born and raised in this area.
Sure.
But for other people, it can be much more challenging so far,
Hmm.
especially because the Burgundy wines are difficult to access when you're living in foreign countries. Even if you have plenty of choice, I mean, quite often the price point can be a kind of a break.
Hmm.
But this is what I always say. You can go for Burgundy because the domestic wines are sometimes even more expensive so far. So you can just try to make an approach to it, and it's something very special that you'll never regret.
Hmm.
And if you have a chance to travel in Burgundy, the best things to me is one more time getting into the restaurant, the wine bar, take, the local mood and just try to be inspired by the atmosphere, listen people talking and having wine, and just try to catch the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And being advice about what to drink. I like to eat this, so what do you suggest to me? And in Burgundy, we are very happy to tell people, well, you should try this or that. Those guys are very passionate too, and they like to share their one experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a kind of nice and friendly relationship around wine.
And travel in Burgundy, if anybody has ever been to a place like Napa Valley, Burgundy is not the same commercial
Oh no,
environment.
no. If you want to find any Napa in Burgundy, you're in the wrong place. Because, sorry, most of the estate are just receiving visit by appointments.
Mm-hmm.
There's no cellar door, there's no cellar room, there are no tasting fees, and nothing like Napa. Here it's very intimate, and you need to make connection
Mm-hmm.
prior coming. Otherwise, it's just a kind of impossible.
Yeah. So let's wrap up by talking a little bit about where you are and what is different and specific about Gevry, and maybe a little bit about your wine lineup before we wrap up here.
Sure. So Gevrey-Chambertin is actually located between Dijon and Beaune,
Okay.
so just in the middle of the area. And so we have several wines produced at the estate. So just to try to make it easy for you, we got some wines from Gevrey to Gevrey South in direction of Moret-Saint-Denis, so Nuit Saint-Georges direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is always the more charming side for the Pinot Noir in Gevrey. And we have 4 cuvées of reds now, including Gevrey-Chambertin Vieille Vigne.
Mm-hmm.
So Vieille Vigne means all vines.
Yes,
so that's a
all
selection of all oldest vines, which are about 70 years old average.
Mm-hmm.
And so this comes from our oldest part, of course, to make this wine. And it used to be the most approachable one, even when very young.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really the wine that people are friendly with, because it's really something very soft, very elegant. Even people who are not familiar with Pinot Noir is gonna like it.
Mm-hmm.
Then
A question quickly. You said this comes from all the spots, and I think many consumers have a notion that all wine comes from a winery and all of their grapes are in one place. But you in fact have several different locations.
Yeah. It's not working like in Napa where you have a castle and
Right.
vineyards around. No, it's very different. Here in Burgundy, you have thousands of little pieces of land,
Mm-hmm.
and you can have just 4 rows of vines, and then it's a neighbor, and then it can be you or it can be anybody else. So Burgundy, that's a kind of mosaic of vines, all different, with plenty of producers different on it too. So that's the reason why sometimes in Burgundy, despite of the terroir definition, terroir which means place and microclimate and specific soil, you need as well to pay attention to the vine grower, because you can have the best terroir of the world. If it's not well worked, you're going to be disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes that's the message I try to make happen. You rather choose a Burgundy, which is very well made, compared to a Grand Cru, which is going to be kind of very medium stuff.
So a Grand Cru being a location, a vineyard that has more prestige, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. It's supposed to be the one which got the more prestige, but actually, if it's not work like it should, you can have a very, very regular Grand Cru, and it's not supposed to be this way. So the message will be go beyond the label. just pay attention to who is making this wine. Because, for example, for us, we just have village level wines, but it's as good as some Premier Cru or Grand Cru. So it's not a shame to drink village or Burgundy as long as it's well made compared to higher stuff, which are very, very kind of medium one.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So just, yeah, go
well, I
ahead.
was going to say, I think that it's the labels in Burgundy can be very confusing for consumers because they talk about the place, and very often the producer name is very tiny at the bottom. So knowing the style of a producer, the way that they work,
Mhm.
and the care and the attention that they give to the vines, and all of those things, it's a learning process for anybody,
Yeah,
but
even
it
for us.
obviously is very important.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And even us in Burgundy, we can't know every single place, every single terroir, every single producers.
Well, that's
So
good to
we
know because I assumed you did.
no, oh no, definitely not. No, I try to. I try hard,
Right.
but definitely it's so large and there are so many people, so many places. A whole life will not be enough, but at least we try, and there's always some learning then.
Well,
So you can,
I think that's a great thing for an intimidated consumer to hear you, somebody who lives in the middle of all of this, say, "Well, I don't know everything either." That's great.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, who cares about knowing things?
Yes.
It's more about the pleasure.
Hmm.
Except if you see really wine like a science, like a medicine, like something that you need to know this way.
Hmm.
But if you are taking it this way, I think you're just not in the good direction. It's just kind of
Right.
you missed it.
So we just want to make sure that I cover all of the wines that you make. So you have a Vievine, the old vine, and then there were a
Yeah.
few more in the lineup that I want to make sure that you mention.
Yeah, so then we got La Justice, which is a single lieu-dit, so a monoparcellaire bottle. This block, I purchased it in 2010, so the first vintage for this wine was 2011 from
Ah.
me. And it's just 3 minutes by foot from the estate. That's a very pretty place with a lot of sand and gravels. And because this vine is very early in spring, you have both the maturity always,
Hmm.
but as well the minerality coming from the soil. So that's just a beautiful balance so far. And just next to it, I mean, like a wine, we have Clos Prieur, which is really, I would say, even more serious wine with more spices, black tones, black pepper, earthiness really coming from the place, and a lot of minerality as well. So Clos Prieur is located below Mazy-Chambertin, and so Mazy is a Grand Cru. So naturally, the Clos Prieur got a lot of power,
Hmm.
elegance, lingering finish, and everything. And last red wine I produce is Cuvée Alexandrine, so it's named from myself because not because I'm completely precious or stuff like that. It's just because coming from the fact is the cuvée, you can't name it from a specific place.
Hmm.
So instead to find a fancy name and kind of stupid name,
Yeah.
I prefer to just put mine as a transition because I was taking over, to my father.
Hmm.
It was a very gentle way to introduce myself to people, like very humble way.
Hmm.
I didn't impose myself. I just proposed something
Yes.
with this bottle of wine. And so I really wanted to create a wine which really a kind of Grand Cru, kind of flagship, like, something really special. So because I couldn't get more vines or anything, I decided to create this specific wine from a selection of 6 of my favorite places and just me on the grapes. So naturally concentrated, very little berries with very thick skin.
Hmm.
So just a little bit of juice. So you have a different ratio in these grapes compared to classic ones naturally.
Yes.
And so it just enhances, the intensity, the power, the complexity. And so it's just 4 barrels production anyway. It's not that large at all, but at least I create something special. And in addition, that's also a tribute to my grandmother, who was as well an Alexandrine.
Ah, well,
Yeah.
there you go. So lovely, lovely. And you said something very interesting there. So it's a selection of 6 of your favorite places. So you don't go and taste your barrels, and you don't go. It really expresses something that's personal to you.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, barrel selection, it's not extra work.
Hmm.
You just pick your favorite ones,
Right.
but you make the job like everything else. There's nothing challenging doing that.
Yes.
It's just then, oh, I prefer this one, I
Hmm.
prefer this one. So it's just tasting. From the beginning, what we do is a selection of my favorite grapes in my favorite blocks.
Hmm.
So there's a double selection, both of places and grapes. And this really makes a difference.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you don't have to make a barrel selection
Hmm.
because you already make something special
Yes.
and you're going to keep it like very preciously, like it's something very, very unique that you don't want to miss out
Hmm.
and then with something else.
That's great. So, any last words of advice before we wrap up here? Either for consumers or for people who are, interested in learning more about Burgundy, about Gevrey-Chambertin, or particularly about you. We want to make sure that we get your website so people know where to find you. But anything else you want to mention before we wrap up?
Yeah, actually, we also have a white.
Ah, yes, exactly. It's
We
only
also have a
10%,
white.
so that's all of the attention it deserves, right?
So yeah, this white is a very specific one. It's made from Chardonnay, I will say, of course, but considering that there's some Pinot Blanc as well in the Côte de Nuit, I just want to make
Hmm.
the precision. So this Marsanais Champerdry grows in Marsanais South. It's actually located between Fissa and Couchet village,
Okay.
so just on a very steep hill. And for this specific reason, because the terroir is so rocky, it's just a wine which got a great balance,
Hmm.
very, very nice acidity, freshness, and vibrance. So that's really a wine which is kind of very lively one and not overweight at all, like buttery or creamy one, nothing
Uh-huh.
like that. So it's really something to discover because you will never think that's a blanc from the Côte de Nuit because Côte de Nuit doesn't produce that much, and it's really a pleasing surprise,
Hmm.
definitely. And so, if some people want to join us, we have a Facebook page, Domaine Marc,
Okay.
that you can join to have, all the news and what we do and article and photos, so you can follow up with the estate, and it's kind of nice
Okay.
for people who are far away.
We'll leave a link to that under this video, as well as. Do you have a website as well, or is it the
No,
Facebook page?
just a Facebook page.
Facebook page. Well, great.
No
Well,
website.
we'll leave a link to that for our viewers as well. And Alexandrine, I really appreciate you taking some time to chat with us today. It's been a great pleasure. I hope that you have a lovely rest of the year, and look forward to seeing you back here in the Pacific Northwest sometime in the near future.
In March. I'll be back.
Well, good, very good. Thank you, and we'll see you in March. I hope.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Take care now.